Hi, everyone. I'm Kaitlin Monte. Welcome to the Missing Live. This week, we are answering some of the questions that we are consistently getting in response to some of our recent reports that we've been doing here on The Missing and on Fox 26 and on our website, fox26houston.com. So I've brought in the experts to answer, again, some of the common questions we're getting about how missing person cases are handled as part of this series where we're trying to help people understand not only how these cases are handled, but how we can all best help to solve them, because there are just so many cases that sit unsolved that just sometimes needs one person to start spreading the word so it can start getting out. And you never know when that tip's going to come in that will solve it. It happens, and that's why we're here. So joining me is Melissa Rangel, who works with the Texas Center for the Missing, and Denise O'Leary, who is in charge of Amber Alerts. And Denise, I want to start with you talking a little bit about what you do in terms of issuing Amber Alerts. We all have seen Amber Alerts. We've all gotten Amber Alerts. But where do they come from? And I guess the question that I've seen people ask is, who can request an Amber Alert?
Yes, so any type of alert, whether it's an Amber Alert or any of the 7 alerts that you see, that is coming from law enforcement. Only law enforcement can request an alert to be issued, because the requirements for these alerts are that a report has been filed with law enforcement and that law enforcement has done their due diligence in their investigation to ensure that the person is in fact missing and it, is not somewhere else. For a child example, that child is at a friend's house. So law enforcement has to do their due diligence. They have to find that this particular case meets the criteria of that particular alert.
And you were telling me as we were chatting that you sometimes do get calls from families who I imagine are in a desperate place, eager to get something done, but they do have to contact law enforcement. Do they have to go through whoever they filed their case with for the missing person case?
Yes. So they want to speak to the detective who is in charge of their case. And absolutely, the first thing that you need to do when you have someone who's missing is don't wait, immediately get in touch with law enforcement and get that report filed, get the ball rolling. Law enforcement is going to start their investigation. They're going to put that missing person here in Texas in what's called TCIC and NCIC. That's the state and national computer database. So anyone in law enforcement who comes across that person, when they run them in their system, it's going to flag them as a missing person. So that's the first thing you want to do, is get with law enforcement.
Let's talk a little bit more about timing on when you should call in a missing person, because Melissa, I know people think, well, 24 hours or 48 hours is sort of this magic number. And after that point, if they haven't shown up, then I can call police. And you have said time and time again to me that that is just not true.
That is not true. In the state of Texas, every law enforcement agency is mandated to take a report for a missing person, regardless of the number of hours that they've been missing, whether it be a child or someone over 65 who may qualify for a silver alert. If you know that they're missing, immediately go to your, call the non-emergency number and get the ball rolling by having an officer come out to your residence or place of business and file a missing persons report.
So when they file that report, they're going to get a case number. Mm-hmm. What do they now do? They filed the report. What's the next step? Because at this point, families are anxious. They want to do something. Is it out of their hands at that time?
It's not out of their hands. What they can do personally is start looking and preparing for the police to come and take that report. Get those call logs. If you are the owner as a parent or a guardian, you are the owner of that account online, get online, get an itemized billing, and get those last numbers that your child or loved one has had called, and be prepared. Have that information to give to law enforcement. We also have a case form, a detailed case form on our website that you can download and print out and start filling that form out and have it ready for law enforcement.
I'm showing that's this form here, right? That people are seeing on your website.
That is for a Get Help Now. That will come straight to us. That will give us the details, like the case number. It's very important that when families immediately want to share on social media, which is great. However, we've got to remind everyone that you've got to also include the law enforcement name, the phone number, and their case number.
Now, where does this information go when someone sends it into you?
It comes straight to our Texas Center for the Missing team. And I, as the case manager, will review it and get a notification. We all get the notification, but I will handle that and take a look at that. Sometimes it's as simple as getting a resource. It's like, I don't know who to turn to. It's a parental interference. Well, have you tried this resource? Well, I want to check the homeless shelters. Okay, we partner. We have amazing partners. And we have a great collaboration with all these homeless shelter partners, and that we can check with them to see if perhaps their loved one has received a service.
Now, I want to go back a little bit to the phone records, and you talked a little bit about that. In one of our recent The Missing Live episodes, there was a conversation between two of our parents in terms of looking for a loved one, and talk about how to go about getting those phone records. Because in some cases, if someone is on their own phone plan, or if they're an adult, it might not be as easy as it is sometimes with a child. Or if their phone is, even if you get a phone record, sometimes all you're getting is a log of who a text was sent to and whether it was sent or received, but not the content of the text. And same with emails or someone's Instagram, all that information. What advice would you have for people who are trying to get phone records or social media records from someone?
Yeah, that can be difficult. It's a lot easier when you are the account holder. Like, we have a lot of parents. I just got off the phone with a parent just 20 minutes ago. Her son ran away from home on Sunday morning. The case hasn't even been assigned to a detective. So I reached out to the law enforcement agency right now to find out who the detective was. But she told me, she goes, I am the owner. I'm the owner of our cell phone plan. I said, great. So while you're waiting for law enforcement detective to call you back, make sure you collect that information. Get that log information. Find out who your child called the last 5 numbers. Usually that's what they want. But just prepare. So it can be difficult. It's a lot easier when it's a child. But if you know that your senior parent has a phone and perhaps it's under their name or your name, maybe have access to that. Ask for that information just to be prepared.
Interesting. And then in terms of social media, any suggestions or guidance there? I know on Facebook you can add people as designated.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the term is, but someone who's sort of associated with the account so that in the event of death or an emergency, they can have access. Is that something that parents should be setting up?
Denise, what do you think?
Absolutely. The other thing that we suggest is if you're an adult, let a family member or loved one know where you keep your list of passwords, so that if something does happen to you, they can have access to your account to get into there. Because law enforcement has to get grand jury subpoenas or search warrants to get into those accounts. And sometimes you can't even get into those accounts without certain passwords. You can't unlock them. Mm-hmm. So anything that you can do, parents should absolutely have access to their children's phone. They should be set up so that they can go in and monitor their children's phone, because that's how they're going to keep them safe.
And that's such a tricky conversation when you get to teenagers, because obviously they don't want you snooping. And going back to work I used to do in education, they used to talk about parents having that conversation so early about, I'm doing this for your safety, I'm doing this to help you. And that conversation really helps to have sooner than later. Unfortunately,
a lot sooner.
Absolutely.
The earlier the conversation, the better.
Now, I have a question for you, Denise, that people ask this all the time. So you ready? When we get an Amber Alert and all of our phones start buzzing, what are we supposed to do? Because sometimes it feels like, well, I'm supposed to go sit on the highway and watch for cars. Sometimes it's hard to remember the license plate numbers off the top of your head. I mean, what is the expectation of what that alert's supposed to do for the public?
Right. So a lot of people get very frustrated when they're getting these alerts, especially if it's not the area they live in. And what I would ask everyone is just to be patient. If you look at the number of people who go missing every year versus the number of alerts that we put out, it's very minimal. We don't want these alerts to turn into, something like car alarms where they go off all the time and people just ignore them. If it's coming to your area, it's because law enforcement believes that that person may be traveling to or from your area, or they may be crossing through your area. So the best thing for you to do is while you're out, be a little bit more observant of your surroundings, be observant of the vehicles that are going by. If a vehicle is listed, check those license plates. If you recognize a vehicle that's going by is similar to the one in the alert, just take a quick look at that license plate. If you see something, or you think you see something that's tied to that alert, call law enforcement. Just call 911 in the area you're in, because that's going to go to the local law enforcement, and let them know why you're calling and for what alert you're calling for.
So 911, not the non-emergency number. You would say you call 911?
If it's an Amber Alert for a child and you think you've spotted that vehicle, absolutely call 911.
So people shouldn't be afraid.
No.
Okay.
If it's something you're unsure about, then in that case, you probably want to call the non-emergency number. But if it's definitely, hey, that's the vehicle from the Amber Alert, we want to get officers there as quickly as possible to recover that child.
Now, do you ever get frustrated with the sort of way that people kind of joke about Amber Alerts as being like, oh, there's an Amber Alert, swipe and get away? I mean, that's got to be difficult because you're dealing with the truth of why these alerts are going out.
Right. Yeah, it is frustrating. And that's why I try to tell people, here are the number of people who were reported missing in the last year, and here are the number of alerts that were issued. And then people take a step back and say, wow, I didn't realize that. And I said, yes, there are specific criteria for those alerts. And law enforcement is extremely careful in which cases they select to use those alerts for. They make sure that case meets all of that criteria.
All right. I have another question that I get a lot, and both of you feel free to sort of share from your perspectives the answer on this. But people consistently ask, why don't police tell families more about what they know in the case? We've had several families who we've featured who say, oh, police said they have evidence that this is now a homicide, but they wouldn't tell me what it was. And we hear that often from the families that I've interacted with and that we've worked with. So why is that? Is there a restriction on what police can say?
That's a good question. I guess, every case is different. Every single case is different. And some family members, the first thing I tell family members when I start talking to them and listening to them is make sure that you tell law enforcement everything. Don't tell me something and then I have to go and tell law enforcement and they don't know about it. It's always crucial that all the details are up front, regardless of what issue your loved one who is missing may have. It's very important to tell police everything.
Right.
Do families have a right to know the details of the case and know what police have on the case?
Well, one of the things that's critical in the case is that if law enforcement is trying to put together a case, especially if it's a homicide, if it turns out to be a homicide, and they're trying to build a case. And so we have seen it in the past where law enforcement has opened up and shared information with a family. And whenever you tell somebody one thing, they're going to tell somebody else, and so on and so on. And then that particular law enforcement agency started seeing some of those details appearing on social media posts from friends or families of the missing person. And that in turn can affect that case. And so I'm sure the family is more interested in having that person, prosecuted to the full extent. And then in the end, when the case is wrapped up, law enforcement can sit down and discuss more of those details with the family. Whereas before that case, met its completion, they didn't want to release that information out to them.
So that takes a good amount of trust in your detectives that they're not telling you something for a good reason.
Right.
That's got to be hard when you are sitting there waiting for details.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because parents, family, they want something to do. They want to be out there. They want to be proactive. They want to know in their heart that they're doing everything they can for their missing loved one.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things Melissa was talking about. When you're at home waiting for law enforcement to come, besides filling out that form that you pulled up, Kaitlin, the Get Help form, there's another more specific, detailed form that was created by Texas Center for the Missing, along with our partners in law enforcement. It's a little different from this form.
Mm-hmm.
And it's detailed. It asks for your missing loved ones' cell phone numbers, social media accounts. Do they have scars, marks, or tattoos? Have they had any surgeries? Do they have medical implants? All that kind of information. And another key thing we forgot to mention is take current pictures of your family members. Have current pictures, even if it's just a quick snapshot on your cell phone. But the one thing you don't want to do is if somebody goes missing, give them a 10-year-old picture of that missing person.
I've also heard people say that they sometimes people are submitting pictures where someone's got a filter on, or it's sort of altering their face from social media, and that's not helpful because now we don't know what the person really looks like.
Exactly.
Interesting. I have another question for you. Again, answer as best you can, but I think people are just eager to know, why do some seemingly obvious cases sit unsolved? Cases where a family has a lot of detail, there seems to be someone who, oh, this just makes sense. They're it, you know? And I think the Gabby Petito case last year, at first people felt like, oh, we know it was the fiance. We just know it. But it took us a while before he was named a person of interest, or I don't even know if he was ever formally named a suspect, but police wouldn't confirm that or say that it was him. Why do some of these cases sit unsolved or feel like we should just be able to crack this, but in fact, we haven't?
I think for law enforcement, there's certain steps that they have to follow. They have to follow the legal process. They can't just go banging down people's doors, going into houses, searching people's houses. They can't compel people to talk to them. So it takes longer for them to build a case, to get evidence, to move forward in these cases. And sometimes it does take a long time. Sometimes what looks very obvious, there's not evidence to support that. And because, we want to make sure that we're providing everything we can to law enforcement. And that's what Melissa was getting to. Everybody has skeletons in their closet. Everybody has things that we're embarrassed by. Tell law enforcement up front. Let them know, okay, so your child did drugs. It's okay. They've seen that before. We've seen it at Texas Center for the Missing. But that can steer the direction of the investigation. And you don't want somebody spending 2 weeks. You don't want an investigator spending 2 weeks looking at one thing when they should have been looking in a completely different direction. So don't be embarrassed by those things. Law enforcement's seen it all. Be upfront, and that's how you can help law enforcement. Those are the things that you can do to help them move that case along.
And Melissa, you've seen it all. You've worked with so many families.
So many families. And the first thing I tell them is, thank you for calling, because you're doing the right thing. Asking for help is so important, and not to be ashamed of asking for help, because, not my child or not my loved one. No. Like Denise says, we all have our own issues and our own skeletons. So being able to ask for help, someone is able to help you and guide you in the right direction. File that missing persons report. Call Texas Center for the Missing. I will answer the phone. Denise will answer the phone. If we can't help you, we're going to find you the help that you need.
And that leads me to our last question is, how do families garner that public support, that support of people calling in tips, people keeping their eyes peeled? What are the best practices that you've seen?
By sharing, I guess I would just say by sharing on social media, it is just again important and continuing to share with each other, um, because you never know that one person might be at the right place at the right time and just see that it's like, where did I see that flyer? I just saw that. Where is that? Oh yeah, that's that Amber Alert. That's that Silver Alert. You know, Denise, Texas Center for the Missing, has been issuing a lot more Silver Alerts in the past year. So we have to continue that conversation as well, that our seniors are wandering off. So what kind of things can you do to prevent that?
Can you talk a little bit about what is a silver alert, Denise? Because I think we have all seen more of those recently. And I had someone ask me, say, I feel like I haven't seen this before. Is this new? It's not new, correct?
No, it's not new. And unfortunately, as our population continues to age, we're going to probably see more and more of these silver alerts. They are for anyone 65 years of age or older who has been diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's. And a recent study showed that the youngest person who had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's was 23 years old. And we did 4 Amber Alerts last year. I did 14 Silver Alerts. So the Silver Alerts are on the rise.
Wow. Well, thank you both for joining me, answering some of the questions. We have tons of questions. We'll have to do this again. And those of you who have questions, put them in the comments. I'll be checking back and we can circle back to this. But if you have someone who's missing, make sure that you're reaching out to the Texas Center for the Missing. They have that form on their website that you can go fill out right away to get that information up. And before we go, Melissa, will you talk a little bit about this Find Your Child resource page that we have here?
On our website, centerforthemissing.org, we have a lot of several free resources on what can you do when your child goes missing, what to do, who to call, what to be looking for. So all that information, including a free child ID kit online. We urge and encourage every family with children under the age of 18. But you know what? At this point, like Denise says, she issued how many silver alerts, Denise?
14 silver alerts.
14 alerts. You can use this child ID kit for anyone that you want to have available. So if you have to call the police, fill this out, have it ready. All their permanent information is on there, and it will help with the investigation.
And this is all on your website.
Yes, centerforthemissing.org. And any and all information that you are free to download and print for free.
We appreciate, again, both of you joining us, answering questions, and all of you who listened and learned a little bit more about the process so that you can be empathetic to the families as they're going through this, and that we can be supportive and helpful to those families. If by no other way, as Melissa said, than sharing the stories of their missing loved ones, so that if even for a moment they remember that they are not forgotten, that they are not alone. This is one of the most horrifying things that can happen to a family and to a loved one. So let's do what we can as a community to wrap our arms around them. And we appreciate both of you for what you do, for the answers and information you gave. And we'll have to talk again soon to continue to answer questions so we can all become as close to experts as possible in supporting our community. So Denise and Melissa, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kaitlin.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time, Wednesdays at 7. That's, when you can find me. And, of course, you can always rewatch these on YouTube on the Fox 26 page. Bye, everyone.